Gorka! Gorka!
You're listening to America First with Sebastian Gorka, former strategist to President Donald J. Trump.
First things first, I want to thank my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. That's number one. Hey, calm down. Calm down. Number two, I want to dedicate this fight to all the people who've been hurt by Marxist ideology. There are millions of you, and I know it. And it's just a fight. I know it's not much, but I want you to know that I love you and I understand the pain.
Does that usually happen? Where's our sports guy? Mr. G. I don't know how much UFC you watch. That's Fighter Benile. Is in sports in general, as a sports guy, whether it's football, UFC, shuffleboard, I don't know what you're into. Is there a lot of dedicating matches and victories to the victims of Marxism?
Excluding UFC, it never happens.
So that's not the first time ever?
There's things like that is starting to happen a lot more in UFC.
Do you think it could happen in other sports?
No.
Because they're too woke?
Yeah, exactly. And the teams won't let them say anything. It won't happen in other sports.
That was great. Wasn't that great?
I loved it.
That was fabulous. We should try and get that guy on the show. Let's find out the reason. He maybe has some family history. Maybe his parents, maybe his relatives stuck in some Marxist hellhole. God bless you guys. Welcome back. This is America First, dedicating victories to all those who are suffering from Marxism. What about those who are suffering from Marxism inside the U.S. military? Wow, sometimes I amaze myself with my segues. We have a very, very disturbing story. It's being reported a couple of conservative outlets. I have in front of me our buddy Amanda Prestigiacomo from the Daily Wire. I'm going to be talking about this tonight as I guest host Grant Stinchfield's program on Newsmax, 8 p.m. Eastern. Here's the latest. You thought the woke military thing isn't going to accelerate? It is in sixth gear already. Space Force Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer has been fired from his command by the Department of Defense for detailing how radical leftist ideologies rooted in Marxism is infiltrating the U.S. military. Here is the official statement. Lieutenant General Stephen Whiting, Space Operations Command Commander, relieved Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Lohmeyer of command of the 11th Space Warning Squadron, Buckley Air Force Base, Colorado, May 14th, due to a loss of trust and confidence in his ability to lead. Really? Do we have trust and confidence in the Secretary of Defense, who says there are enemies inside the U.S. military to lead that military? Do we have trust and confidence in the man who happens to have the rank of Commander-in-Chief and is clearly physically and mentally decrepit? This decision was based on public comments made by Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer in a recent podcast. Lieutenant General Whiting has initiated a command-directed investigation on whether those comments constituted a prohibited partisan political activity. Like what? Like saying, vote for this candidate? Well, what did he say? Lohmeyer recently appeared on podcasts to promote his book, which, by the way, since he was fired yesterday, is unavailable, but is number one on Amazon. Everybody wants it. I ordered my copy as well. They better get printing. It is number one. The book's title, maybe you should order it too. Irresistible Revolution, Marxism's Goal of Conquest and the Unmaking of the American Military. According to the Washington Post, Colonel Lohmeyer said via email, quote, that he did consult with military public affairs officers and legal counsel before publishing the book and that he had a team of attorneys read the manuscript. I complied with what I understood was required as part of the pre-publication process. My intent never has been to engage in partisan politics. I have written a book about a particular political ideology, Marxism, in the hope that our Defense Department might return to being politically non-partisan in the future, as it has honorably done throughout history, he told military.com. So he published a book with the objective to get the U.S. military to be apolitical, to return to its non-partisan roots. And that's why he's fired? For a political transgression? During his podcast appearance, Lohmeyer detailed the Marxist-related issues in the military. He said he was asked to train his troops with extremist training and anti-extremist training and given a 70-page booklet on talking points. And I guarantee you one thing, none of the extremists in that 70-page book bore the name Black Lives Matter or Antifa. Lohmeyer told the Information Operation podcast that the young service members in the military are inundated by a hyper-politicized work environment where diversity and inclusion initiatives are being pushed constantly. What you see happening in the U.S. military at the moment is that if you're a conservative, then you're lumped into a group of people who are labeled extremists. If you're willing to voice your views, you are the extremist. And if you're aligned with the left, then it's okay to be an activist online because nobody will hold you accountable. So that's the value metric. If you're a conservative, you better shut up or you might lose your command. If you're a left-wing activist, if you're fighting for, diversity and saying that white Americans are white supremacists and inherently racist, you'll never get in trouble. In fact, you might be promoted. Much more tonight on Newsmax. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First. Vincent in Queens, welcome to America First.
Dr. Gorka, I'm listening to your show. It's very exciting, very interesting. This vaccine, every time I'm in the elevator, people are asking me, did I get my vaccine? If we both have masks on, I could lie and say, of course, I have, even though I have it. The question is, why don't we're not spending any time developing a cure for the COVID virus. Shouldn't we have a cure? The vaccine is not the cure. I'm thinking of... Yeah,
you don't need a cure for a virus. It has to do the natural cycle of a virus. The way a virus cycles is enough people get immune to it. That's the deadly herd immunity phrase. And then the virus doesn't have enough people to infect to maintain its life cycle. And then it dies out.
Okay, now once you get the virus, shouldn't we discuss with people so they know what they can take so they don't... The fear is they're going to die. Everybody's, we're going to die. We're not going to die from it if we knew if you could take, say, Tylenol or something that would help you.
But hang on, Vincent, think of what's happened in the last year. There are a handful of proven drugs, proven pharmaceuticals that can cure or make you recover rapidly from the coronavirus. This ivermectin and the one the president said is the game changer, the one that I took when I caught the coronavirus, hydroxychloroquine. But Vincent, when you have governors banning pharmacists from actually filling prescriptions because President Trump says it's good, then it doesn't matter how much you educate people, Vincent.
I got it. You made a great point.
All right, and one more thing: when you get in that elevator, and somebody asks you, "Are you vaccinated?" Just ask them back, "What? Don't you believe that your mask works?" Okay.
So if I don't wear a mask, that means I'm vaccinated, basically.
Well, yeah, you know, they're not allowed to know what your medical history is. Let them think what they think, but just ask them, what? Do you mean your mask doesn't work? Then you'll get the reaction that you've been looking for. Thank you, Vincent. God bless you. I'm Sebastian Gorka. This is America First on the Salem Radio Network. Our number here is 833-33-GORKA, G-O-R-K-A, 833-334-6752. If you want to fly the America First flag, if you proudly want to profess your MAGA credentials, check out our new store, sebgorkastore.com. That's SEBGORKA store.com. Relief Factor, pain relief that's drug-free, pain relief that actually works. Just listen to Kent from Arkansas. I've been taking Relief Factor for 3 months, and I'm amazed at how much my pain has decreased. In rainy weather, I would be in ridiculous pain and just wanting to crawl in bed and cry. At this writing, it has been raining all day, and I feel just fine. Before Relief Factor, I never had a day when something didn't hurt. Now, most days, I have a great quality of life. Thanks, Relief Factor. That story should be your story. It could be. Find out today by calling 800-500-8384. Order the 3-week quick starter pack at relieffactor.com. The only thing you have to lose is the pain. You know it makes sense. 800-500-8384. relieffactor.com.
Portions of America First are brought to you in part by Job Creators Network.
I think that it is very important to stand up for what's right. I know that there are many members who have expressed concern about their own security. And I think that's an important point to think about as well, that we now live in a country where members' votes are affected because they're worried about their security. They're worried about threats on their lives.
That's Liz Cheney, who's saying that there are people who are concerned for the threats on their lives as politicians. I can think of one in particular. His name is Minority Whip Steve Scalise, a good friend of this show, who was almost murdered. He was shot in the hip by a volunteer of the Bernie Sanders campaign called James Hodgkinson, an attack that recently the director of the FBI thought to reclassify as suicide by cop. Despite the fact that James Hodgkinson, when he was finally neutralized by two brave police officers who were escorting Steve Scalise, was found to have a hit list on his body of only Republican members of Congress. And as such, the FBI quietly on Friday, when nobody was watching, recategorized that event as a domestic terror event and not suicide by cop. This leads one to ask the question, is the intelligence community, is the federal intelligence agency such as the FBI, the CIA, and others being bastardized by political influences? Let's ask a man who was one of our special guests yesterday on the Gorka Reality Check on Newsmax. He is the creator, the founder, the editor-in-chief of JustTheNews.com. And I bet John Solomon has something to say about the politicization of U.S. intelligence. Welcome, John.
Yeah, good to be with you, Sab. Boy, if it isn't deja vu all over again, how many times since 2015 have we seen instances where the FBI, the CIA, intelligence agencies have said one thing with a political twist to it, only to have it unravel when the facts are applied, often months and years later. We can go through so many of them, right? The Russia bounties, Russia collusion, the actual nature of the Trump-Ukraine president call, which obviously was much different than originally reported by the intelligence whistleblower, if we call them that. And this weekend, we got two new ones. One being the one you just mentioned. The FBI has now reclassified the shooter in the June 2017 tragedy, the shooting of the congressional ball game as a domestic violent extremist after previously suggesting he was a person just seeking to commit suicide by cop. That happened on a Friday night, a Saturday morning, but fortunately we were able to get the news out. And then on Sunday, Devin Nunes, the former House Intelligence Committee chairman, released a letter showing that there were several intelligence analysts who believed that the original conclusion that the COVID-19 virus was a natural pathogen, that they disagreed with that, thought it might have come from the Wuhan Institute of Virology, but they were silenced. They were quieted for almost a year. Now we all know, a lot of people believe that, including the Biden administration thinks it's a credible theory. But the silencing of dissent, the politicalization of determinations, it's been infecting the intelligence community now for 5 full years.
And when we see recently the new Attorney General, Merrick Garland, state not on his own, he made it clear that it was the intelligence analysis that he received that determined that the greatest threat to the United States is now white supremacist terrorism. You are now running a news agency. You've been on the national security beat for decades. Is that statement supported not only by what you hear, but by the events of the last year in America?
Not that I know from my reporting, right? I mean, people will make assessments of what happened in the last year and come to different conclusions. But the intelligence analysts I look at still view China as the most extreme threat to American security, followed very closely by Islamic extremism, terrorism. And then, there is a growing concern about homegrown domestic terrorists. And that falls like around third among the people that I talk to every day, which raises the question, how did it get elevated to number one all of a sudden? And what is the motivation? And also, more importantly, what is the data underlying that assessment? Remember, when we finally got to the data in the Russia collusion case, we found out there was nothing there. It was Russian disinformation and bad political dirty tricks. No one has been challenging the data. I'd like to see the data. If it really is the number one threat, what data supports that? Similarly, what data supported the conclusion in March, April, May of last year when the intelligence community was saying, COVID-19, natural pandemic, natural evolution of a pathogen. We now have multiple Biden administration officials saying, no, the Trump theory probably is one of the two most viable theories, that it came out of the Wuhan lab. Why for a whole year were we deprived that information? And what was that original determination made on? I think it's time to demand the data and find out if these intelligence analysts have been playing politics with the American people's security.
You've written the book, Fallout, Nuclear Bribes, Russian Spies, and the Washington Lies that Enriched the Clinton and Biden dynasties. Could you posit, is there any theory out there, for example, with regards to this latest letter and to this assessment or this perversion of the assessment when it comes to the COVID China virus? Why on earth, in whose interests would it be to distort the intelligence regarding the largest communist dictatorship in the world, John?
It's really interesting. I've been talking to a lot of intelligence professionals, some who left the government but remain in the private sector and some who remain inside the government. And they told me it's a very interesting thing, and it probably won't surprise you given the dynamic of the last 5 years. There is if Trump said it, we must take the opposite position phenomenon going on in the security establishment. One could argue it also went on in the public health sector for a while during pandemic. But that Trump obsession, if Trump says it, we're going to come to the opposite conclusion. We saw that with the Russian bounty story last year where there were leaks suggesting this was a credible intelligence threat. We now know it wasn't. We saw that with Russia collusion. When he said, I'm not a Russian sympathizer, they said, oh, he's colluding. It turned out that was garbage. I think there's that particular element of just Trump obsession and trying to be a counterbalance to Trump. There's a second element, and there's a new book out by Barry Meyer, a former New York Times reporter, that talks about the rise of private intelligence agencies, firms like Fusion GPS. And they are becoming increasingly sources, open source or private source, to feed information into the traditional intelligence community, and it could very well be infecting the intelligence community with bad information. Remember, we learned that a lawyer for the Democratic Party, a guy named Sussman, was feeding information to the CIA and the FBI. That sort of sideways insertion from political and outside sources into the intelligence community is another thing that worries a lot of my experts that I talk to.
That is a topic that I want us to broach in the next segment, the rise of the private intelligence services, intelligence providers, or pseudo-intelligence providers. He's the author of Fallout. Follow him right now. Jay Solomon reports every morning, every evening. Make sure you check in with justthenews.com. Bookmark it right now. They have one goal: to report the news. And you can check it with the background materials they provide in those big investigative pieces. I'm Sebastian Gorka, former strategist to President Trump. This is the Salem Radio Network. The Hellcat from Springfield Armory is still the smallest, highest capacity micro-compact in the world. The definitive concealed carry handgun is feature-rich, chambered in 9mm, and is available in standard or optics-ready configurations with 11+1 in the standard magazine and 13+1 with the extended magazine. The Hellcat from Springfield Armory gives you the capacity to defend. It's so good, I've got two.
The truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. That's Dr. G's specialty, America First.
Not only that, but getting you a good night's sleep. We can do everything here. Mike Lindell's pillow, the only pillow that never gets hot, never loses its shape. 10-year warranty. You can get up to 66% off at mypillow.com if you use my name. That's how much Mike Lindell respects you, our listeners. Support this great patriot. Over 100 incredible products on this one website. Call 800-829-8468. That's 800-829-8468. mypillow.com. Promo code GORKA. We are back with the editor-in-chief, the founder of justthenews.com, John Solomon. His book is Fallout. Follow him at Jay Solomon Reports and bookmark justthenews.com. John, you mentioned the rise of these private intelligence suppliers, and you mentioned Fusion GPS, of course, the now nefarious, the infamous Steele dossier. What is the nature of these things? Is it possible? Because Fusion GPS, as far as I can tell, is just a place where you go to pay somebody to manufacture dirt on somebody you don't like.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that in many of these firms. Like you've got someone like Christopher Steele, former MI6 agent. He creates a company called Orbis Business Intelligence, and he's selling his alleged know-how and spycraft to private organizations. And at the same time he's doing that, he's also reporting to the FBI. Really a problem. Remember, one of the things we learned about Steele, he was working for Russian oligarchs and feeding information to the FBI, and it was ultimately determined that those oligarchs may have fed him or allowed him to be targeted with Russian disinformation. So this is a cottage industry that is growing by leaps and bounds. Former journalists, former intelligence officials, former FBI agents, like a guy named Dan Jones, who created a liberal-leaning organization called the Democracy Integrity Project, with lots of money now, and they spend all day researching and peddling stories, dirt on people, to news organizations, as Barry Meyer's book now lays out in the New York Times, and also to intelligence community agencies. And as this cottage industry grows, there's very little regulation, and the early evidence suggests there's been a lot of misinformation perpetrated through these vendors. And so it's something we should all be aware of. I talk in the end of my book in Fallout, the era of creating false reality, that we've gotten very good in America. There are professionals who can create false reality long enough to the American people believe it, then it takes years to unravel. Russia collusion being a great example. These agencies, these private agencies, are at the heart of that business.
Now, this isn't a new phenomenon. You go back to Watergate, Deputy FBI Director Deep Throat, the sources to the Washington Post. But as somebody who's been in the business as long as you have, who now is dedicated to getting the truth out there, is there a qualitative shift in the relationship between these agencies and the legacy media? What have you seen in the last few years as you've been trying to get the truth out about things like the Russia collusion allegations, John?
Well, first off, these private agencies have become much more involved in politics, like what we saw with Glenn Simpson and Christopher Steele and the Hillary Clinton campaign. Inside the intelligence agencies themselves, there's a growing number of political appointees who feel it's okay to try to shape, omit, change the intelligence analyses that are coming out of the career people. By the way, the career people are sensational. They're getting silenced more and more. I think that was the important part of Devin Nunes's letter. The analysts' voices, when they don't toe the line of what the politicos want, they're being silenced right now, and that's bad for intelligence, bad for security. That's why I think Congressman Nunes is pressing so hard for a review on the Wuhan lab. I think we're going to learn a lot about politics from that review.
You mentioned the career staff and your respect for the career staff. One question, John. Where are the real whistleblowers? I don't mean the fake ones like Vindman, but where are the real ones from the FBI, the NSA, the CIA who's saying, you know, what I'm seeing above me or around me, the political exploitation of intelligence or the perversion of it goes against our standards. Do they not exist, John?
They fear so much right now that if they come forward, that their careers will be ended. Just think about it. We knew there was an agent named William Barnett who for 3 years believed there was politics going on in Russia collusion. He didn't get his voice heard until September of 2020, even though his concerns dated back to the fall of 16. It is a slow path for those who want to speak out against this politicalization. There's retribution, there's fears, there's career concerns. And I think there's a moment for America to create some new whistleblower organizations. A lot of the whistleblower organizations today lean left. They do good work, but they only worry about liberal causes. Maybe conservatives or centrists need to start to create some whistleblower organizations that give voice to others who see problems in the institutions who are getting silenced today.
What an interesting idea. I'm Sebastian Gorka. He's John Solomon. Jay Solomon reports, justthenews.com. Thank you, John. And if you missed it, John was one of our special guests on the Gorka Reality Check. Check out our Rumble feed for more clips from yesterday's show on Newsmax. And tonight, I will be hosting the Grant Stinchfield Show, 8 p.m. Eastern. Thank you, John. I'm Sebastian Gorka, coming to you from the ReliefFactor.com studios.